Well, thinking about institutional design in Brazil, main features, surely. We have a bicameral parliament, just like in the US, but many more representatives, as you can see. We have 513 congressmen and 81 senators. The Senate representing the states with an equal representation, 3 senators for each state, and the Camera without that in a representative basis. We have a highly independent constitutional court, and this is a very meaningful feature because it will explain a lot of our challenges nowadays. Our constitutional court have 11 justices. The only constitutional requirement for them is to have more than 35 years old and notorious knowledge in law, whatever this may mean, notorious. This is the only requirement. Nowadays we have justices that came from the career as a judge, but we also have justices that do not have that background. So we have lawyers that now are at the Constitutional Court. We have people from the state advocacy who are there. 2 women, 9 men. And what sort of guarantees they have to be independent? Well, they have something like a tenure. They're once nominated, they cannot be taken away from the court. We have a constitutional clause that establishes that one should retire once reaches 75 years old, and they do not intend to retire. We have 2 justices that probably will find this compulsory retirement moment next year, Celso Melo and Marco Aurelio in the following year. They have their own budget, so this is something very relevant. And now they're at the spotlight. Everybody knows that we have a constitutional court. People do know the name of the justices. People do have sympathy or not to this justice or that justice. They do know the justices who are clearer in their expositions. A parenthesis. Our sessions are broadcasted in TV. They are broadcasted in TV and they are posted in a YouTube channel. So you can see whatever the justices are saying and debating. And this is very debatable also because therefore they sometimes have quarrels in the front of the TV. This is happening with more repeatedly than we would like. But this is why people do know the justices and do know that this one is clearer than the other one. And it's very common that during the session, the justices will say, for you who are watching us, this is very new. For who are watching us. So they are very engaged in external deliberation. Well, surely that constitutional option increases the rating of the interference in the executive decisions because they have the power to decide to interfere and they would not face any sort of consequences because they have tenure, they have their own budget, they have a lot of institutional grants. Well, distinctive features, the first one I have already mentioned is the hyper-presidentialism. We have a very strong executive branch with quasi-legislative power. They could enact what we call provisional measures in a literal translation, which is just like the executive acts in the US. So the president could decide in certain fields, and this will be enacted as and work as some sort of legislation. Congress can decide differently, but this is This brings a lot of power. And budget is the main concern because budgetary decisions are held by the president. Differently from the US, the budget is not mandatory. So the budget is merely an authorization to spend public fundings. So you can block any sort of initiative by merely refusing to release the budget. And this happens all the time. We're now facing a discussion about social security system, and the president is clearly making the discussion speed throughout granting money from the budgetary system. Finally, as an institutional feature, we have a very asymmetric federalism. What do I mean by this? First of all, we have a very different model of federalism because we have three entities. We have the central government, the union, we have the state government, but we also have with autonomy the municípios, the municipalities, with autonomy also. Well, at least nominal autonomy, because it is mentioned in the Constitution, but then again, budget will cloud that autonomy a little bit, because municipalities have a lot of functions that they should develop according to the Constitution, just like education and health, providing education and health, and this requires a lot of money. And sometimes we do not have the money, therefore we're going to address the central government and be very, with a very high level of acceptance of their suggestions. So this is the asymmetric federalism. A second characteristic of our asymmetric federalism is the fact that many of the competencies in the legislative realm, they are held by the central government. So this is another element that brings some sort of complication.